child is left with his mother. But now you find that the thinking is different. Fatherhood.
Rondell, are you hearing me?
Hello, good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Jesse.
Hi, you're hearing me loud and clear?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'm going to assume that everyone else is able to hear us loud and clear. And I see that Adrian Jagaran is standing by. So I'd just like to invite everyone to, well, sit up straight or stand if you're able to for the national anthem, which will be performed for us by Mr. Adrian Jagaran. Thank you very much, Adrian Jagaran. Ladies and gentlemen who are assembled here for today's session, we just want to ask you to indulge us for one more minute. We want to observe a minute of silence to remember all those who would have lost their lives, particularly over the past year to COVID-19. And that minute starts now. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Who knew how long a minute could be? And when we think of all the lives that have been lost and all the families that are in mourning and who continue to mourn those who they've lost over this pandemic, it really does bring home the message that we each need to be individually responsible in our behavior and in our actions, because we are each other's keepers during this period, and our actions actually do impact on each other. And today's session is all about actions impacting on each other as we join with the Single Fathers Association, or the Trinidad and Tobago Fathers Association, and look at, the issue of fatherhood in this country, and try to restore to it some of the dignity and presence that it may have lost along the way. Try to raise it up once more, and of course, look at some of the issues that are impacting fathers in our society, issues such as legislation, issues such as regulations, issues even of culture and socialization that are preventing men from being the best possible fathers they can be, and preventing the rest of society from making the space for them to do that, as well as for the women and children in their lives for recognizing and respecting the role that they're supposed to play today. The session today is going to be very, very tight. Each person who is a facilitator today will have about 3 minutes to make their presentation. We're hoping to get through those presentations by about 5 o'clock, and we will be taking questions after that. We'll have a question and answer session. An extended one. We're also going to try to take sessions, questions even before then. And one of the things that we want you to know is that you can send in your messages to us on Facebook, on this feed that you're looking at right now. And we will pull your questions, collate all of them among our key themes, and put them to our chief facilitators today. We want to say a special good afternoon to all our facilitators. We want to say a special good afternoon to President of TFAT, Rondell Fields, who is he's the chief cook and bottle washer behind today's session. Good afternoon to you, Rondell. We also want to welcome all of the our friends from the police service, in particular, Acting Inspector Guy Elaine, head of the Gender-Based Violence Unit and the Child Protection Unit, as well as Sergeant J.C. Small from Community Policing. We also have our friends here from the Family Court, who we want to say a special hello to. We've got legal minds as well to share their expertise with us this afternoon. And we also have representatives from the National Family Services as well. So it's going to be a very rich discussion today. And without further ado, I'm going to invite our first speaker, and that person will be Sergeant J.C. Small from the Community Policing Division, to share his thoughts and to discuss, to raise key issues with us to ponder this afternoon. So Sergeant Small, please go.
Pleasant evening. It's Jesse Vento. Pleasant evening, Trinidad and Tobago, and to the other panelists. I am the 2nd Division Officer responsible for community relations within the Central Division of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And I just want to highlight that the community relations throughout Trinidad and Tobago have been really on the ground, out and about. I mean, we have been supporting the emergency response team with quarantine visits, and that has given us the opportunity more so to be out on the streets in the communities. We liaise with the schools almost daily. Principals, members of staff contact us to reach out to sometimes children who have any issues with coming online and that kind of thing. And you know, when we do these home visits, we have seen so many issues, especially with single parent homes, because really and truly to really deal with this entire pandemic situation, you know, teamwork is what will make this thing work in terms of being able to cope and, you know, ensure that the children are comfortable. And you know, there are a lot of conflicts more so now because of persons who normally do be in the same space together. We have a lot of other household members home, you know, extended family members home, and there's a lot of other underlying issues that contribute to sometimes somewhat dysfunctional homes. But we have really been working above and beyond to, you know, do parenting programs, sometimes virtually. We have had from the Common Sense parenting program, Ms. Jackman supported us. We did a number of workshops and to really just get people to understand, you know, what are some of the ways that they could use to cope, to help their children cope, so that, you know, we have a better situation in the household. And you know, I just want to mention too, we have also been attending like several court matters involving children where they are single parent homes and whatever. And I really see the need to further collaborate, and, you know, for us as different agencies and stakeholders to collaborate. So when we reach in a particular situation, like for example, where there is a need for social support, we could have that input from Ministry of Social Development at that same time. Just, having done a court hearing just yesterday morning, I seen the need in moving forward for us to really further collaborate, notwithstanding that we have the network, we have the contact numbers, we always in communication with each other. But when you bounce up a particular situation, to have all hands on deck to resolve it as quickly as possible for the best interest of the household and more so the children. So thank you very much. On behalf of the community relations, I want to say, feel free to reach out to us. Within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we have our superintendent, Mr. Kilawan. We have police youth clubs, almost 100 throughout Trinidad and Tobago, with over 5,000 members. So notwithstanding that we have a catchment of persons in the police youth clubs, we also work with the schools and the community itself. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Sergeant Small, for sharing that bit of information with us. And that certainly is important to know. A couple key points there that you would have raised, particularly over the past year. And I expect that we will be dealing with that in a little more detail a little later on. Let's bring on very quickly our second speaker. I'm going to ask ASP Guy Elaine to take the floor now and to share with us some key pointers and key information that she would like us to take away this afternoon. ASP Guy Elaine, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, and thank you to the moderators, Ms. Jessie, as well as Mr. Fazir. I want to say thank you. I also want to say thank you to the president of the Single Fathers Association, because I guess without him, this could not have happened. We have to have the conversation. We have to continue to speak out. I would also like to thank the panelists, which I am part of, our esteemed panelists who are here this evening. These are really hard times. We are living in a time of a pandemic, and having the conversation relative to gender-based violence, relative to child protection, is always needed. Long ago, persons would keep these issues as a family and a private issue. These things are no longer private or family issues. These are issues we have to bring to the forefront nationally, internationally, and deal with the issues. These are big elephants that are in the rooms that we need to address, and the police cannot do it alone. And in 2020, 2021, I'm seeing the shift, I'm seeing the paradigmic shift where everyone is realizing that they must get on board in order to solve gender-based violence and child protection issue, child abuse, sexual abuse, abandonment, neglect of children. We need to protect our children. Our children are the future, and we all need to protect our children. The home must be a safe place for children. Even though relationships may sever, at the end of the day, the children must not be the ones to suffer in the relationship. They are innocent, and we must all work together to ensure that Trinidad and Tobago and every home is safe for our children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ASP Guy Elaine, for your words. And we're moving swiftly through the discussions here this afternoon. I want to bring in the courts right now. I believe we have with us Mr. Siobhan Lewis from the Family Court. He is the Family Court Manager. Mr. Siobhan Lewis, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Jessie.
Good afternoon,
panelists and Trinidad and Tobago. It's always a pleasure being in these forums. My name is Siobhan Lewis. As Jessie introduced, I'm one of the 3 family court managers in the judiciary. The first time we were part of this forum, I think it was 2017, 2018. And we recognized the immediate benefits from engaging with the Fathers Association, from engaging with other organizations and institutions and parents, because we all have a common goal, right? The common goal is the well-being, care and well-being of our children. And many times we sit in our own organizations, we sit in our own institutions, we sit in homes as parents, and we are just talking at each other, but we are not talking to each other. And so from the first time being a part of this forum, it showed the value of talking to each other, listening to each other. And we were able as a court to come away with some key points as to how we can better serve the customers that come to the court, and how we can work with other institutions towards that common goal of care and well-being of the children. As Sergeant Small pointed out, as Acting Superintendent Guy Allen pointed out, we can't do it alone. The court can't do it alone, the police can't do it alone, parents can't do it alone, different ministries and agencies can't do it alone. It's something that we need to come together and do. And so I look forward to this segment again today, because I know we're going to get some more key takeaways and key ideas, critical ideas that we can take forward and implement to better our society at the end of the day. Thank you very much, Jesse.
Thanks very much, Siobhan Lewis. And we're going to stay with the legal side of things a little while longer. I want to bring on Attorney at Law, Renuka Rambajan, to share a couple of keywords with us. Renuka Rambajan, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. All protocols observed, of course. Of course, I would want to say special good afternoon to a colleague of mine, the Deputy Director of the Children's Authority, Ms. Rupchan. I must hail her especially, as well as Superintendent Guy Allen. We know each other outside. We've been in the trenches for a while, so I must recognize them. Of course, I would want to recognize Rondell Fields, who is basically a man who personifies the power of one. One man who found himself falling afoul of the legal system, who created an association, who has lobbied and lobbied hard. And as a consequence, there is a paradigm shift that I can attest to in the legal system, where there is now greater recognition for the rights of a single father. We have seen that the conversation has started where this concept of the mother is the best one to have care for the child, that is no longer the rhetoric that is automatically accepted. And I want to recognize and commend him. Like Mr. Lewis, we were in some fora before regarding this Single Fathers Association, and the conversation has grown and the issues have developed to really fruitful discussions, and now we see positive outcomes of that. I want to say that, the work of the Gender-Based Violence Unit, the Children's Authority, all of the states who are stakeholders in the systems when it comes to children and family, they've all worked very hard over the last few years. And my job as an attorney is to represent the interests of whoever comes before me. But I want to say that when we speak in situations such as this, you have to always remember that your case is fact sensitive. So not everything that you hear might apply to you. So I want to give that first disclaimer. The second disclaimer is I will not be given legal advice through questions that are asked, because I'm not privy to the circumstances of your case. And sometimes what happens is when we have the Q&A, a lot of people would want to say, well, in my case, so, right? Let's not go down that road. Let's use generalization so we don't personify children or parties when we ask questions. And finally, I want to say to all of the persons who are listening today that I commend you on coming out to listen, because it is always important that we know our rights, especially our legal rights in situations such as this. So those are my key words to start with, and I thank you for the opportunity for being here this afternoon.
Thanks very much, Renuka Rambajan, Attorney at Law. We want to switch focus now and have another group of our facilitators speak. These are the people coming out of civil society. These are the people working in the trenches with those fathers and mothers who are trying to do their very best to do right by their children, and who sometimes make mistakes that will bring them before people like Renuka, before people like ASP Guy Elaine and Sergeant Small. So let's start first with the Single Mothers Association President, Charmaine Howe, and we'd like to hear from you at this point in time. Thank you very much. You have the floor.
Pleasant good afternoon, Ms. Jessie Bento, and also to our second host, Mr. Fazir. Greetings to the panelists I am very grateful to Mr. Randall Fields for inviting us to be a part of this discussion today. We thank you. And we look forward to sharing our situations and finding solutions going forward. So I thank you very much. And before I go, happy Father's Day in advance to all our fathers on the panel and by extension, the fathers of our country, Trinidad and Tobago. Happy Father's Day in advance. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Charmaine Howe. I'd like us to go across to Tobago very quickly and meet the president of B-Men Tobago, Michael Stewart. Michael Stewart, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Desiree and Fazil. Good day to you all. I just want to say that one of the things that we need to encourage are the authority figures, the organizations that would help us to put some emphasis on men and fathers. And the reason I'm saying so is that I looked at the United Nations International Days, and this is one of the influential organizations. When the Women's Day, International Women's Day was formed, it was formed under the premise of equality of the gender, etc. So when I checked their schedule, 6th of February, Female Genitalia Mutilation Day, zero tolerance to that. 11th of February, International Women's and Girls Science. March 8th, International Women's Day. March 10th, International Day for Women Judges. The 11th of October, Day of the Girl Child. 15th of October, Rural Women's Day, and we can go on. But yet, for November 19th, that is considered International Men's Day, we have World Toilet Day under the United Nations rubric. When we have organizations such as these not giving the support to men and boys, then we'll have a problem that would emanate from that, is fatherhood, etc. The second thing that I want to point out is when we see, and I laud whenever I see the women's conferences, breaking the glass ceiling, women in leadership, women in politics, etc. And I support that 100%. My thing is, when we're dealing with the men and boys, we keep giving a signal that needs to change when we want to have a conference called dealing with male toxicity, masculine toxicity, etc. Those are the topics, given in a negative spin, when we could go with it in the same direction that the women programs are given from a positive standpoint. And many of these come out of government offices. I've had the occasion to call some of these offices to ask them, could we just change that? We've gone out with boys and in schools to run some of these programs or speak in some of these programs. And the boys say, why did you all keep coming to us with these type of topics? And which there is credibility in that. And I'm saying until we could get some of the influential people, the influential, the media, etc., when it is Mother's Day, there is a furor and so on, and we support that. But when it is Father's Day, it is low-key. So we've got to really put more emphasis on it. And this document that has been laid by the JSC gives the kind of platform for us to start discussing in a very serious way, in not just giving it lip service, this issue of fatherhood and gender equality. I live in the country, you could just tell that little one. Yeah, but it is really giving emphasis and giving tangible support to it by our very actions that we do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael Stewart, and certainly some food for thought there that he's shared with us. That should make for lively discussion a little later on. We're racing through our facilitators. We've got a couple more to go through before I cede the floor to my colleague, Fazir Mohammed. The next person that I'm going to bring on which is the third of our representatives from civil society, is none other than the man who makes today's session possible, President of the Fathers Association, Rondell Fields. And I want you to take note of the fact that this organization has evolved from just being the Single Fathers Association to being the Fathers Association, a much more inclusive title. Rondell Fields, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Jesse. Good afternoon, Fazir. Good afternoon, other panelists. Good afternoon, Trinidad and Tobago. And as you mentioned, that it's about being inclusive. It's about all of us working together. It's about multi-sector approach. It's surreal for me today, knowing where we started, knowing the amount of licks we get. I mean, some of you, Jesse, you and Fazir would know the amount of peacock that we would have gotten from people, even from magistrates in the past. Fazir, a magistrate called TV6 and said they don't like to hear Rondell Fields talk. That has changed the TV. I don't know if Fazir remembers, but it's been a lot of gut, and it hasn't been Rondell Fields alone. It's been men in the trenches. Wendell Grant, Marlon Anderson. Wendell Grant has stood by my side for years. Sometimes when I say, boy, I can't take it no more, stood and supported us. And I feel so good today to see that we could come together. And this is what we have to do in Trinidad and Tobago, not just because of this pandemic. We've been saying it before. Parents are going through so much. Yes, we are in civil society. Yes, we have our state jobs. Yes, but most of us on this panel also are parents, and we know the challenges and struggles that even we going through. So I thought it was so important for us to give people who are going through the levels of anxiety at home right now, who don't have the right tools, who don't have the right ideas, people who are going through co-parenting problems at this juncture in our life, to really find some way to provide restoration to our family life, restoration to our personal life, to bring some kind of mental peace to ourselves. So I must thank all panelists, everyone that took the time to be here. Thank everybody in Trinidad and Tobago who saw that it is important to educate yourself. People like to say it's a talk shop, it's a talk shop. But if it wasn't for all this talking all these years, a lot of the changes that we saw and a lot of the things that we're still pushing, nothing would have happened. Sometimes it's good to say something. Don't sit silently and do anything. So I must commend Trinidad and Tobago for coming out in attendance today. I must thank everyone again, all the panelists for taking time out of their personal lives. We all have our personal challenges, whatever they may be, whether they be health, whether they be finances. We are all going through a financial strain at this point in time. And we're hoping to see some good questions coming out from the public being messaged in. This is the time for you to vent. This is the time for you to get things out of your chest. The stresses, the psychosocial stresses. When I say psychosocial, I just mean anxiety and pressure in your brain. Now is the time to get it out, and let's see as best. We can't guarantee we have all the answers, but we may have some tools, and you may have some tools to share with us that we all can navigate through this time and post this time. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Rondell Fields, President of the Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago. We want to introduce three more facilitators who will be sharing their expertise with us this evening. The first of those persons, this is focusing from the state sector now, and the first of those persons is Deputy Director of the Children's Authority, Rhonda Gregoire Rupchan. The floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Jesse. As a child protection organization, it really is heartening to be here and to say that the authority sees the role of fathers as so very critical, especially in fostering growth and development for our nation's children. It is an honor to be a part of this particular forum to explore and to continue to advocate for support for our nation's children through their fathers. Through additional referrals, programs developed for fathers with fathers in mind, with fathers as the focus, as well as appropriate interventions, fathers can be even more empowered to support and defend the rights of their children. Collaboration is the key to the discussions that we are having today. And it has been said by the speakers that came before me. It's so important that we speak to each other and that we share our resources. We look forward to our continued collaboration with the Fathers Association as we work together to defend and support child rights and to make child protection everybody's business. Thank you so much. Over to you, Jessie.
Thanks very much, Rhonda, Gregoire, Rupchan. And yes, as you folks at Children's Authority always say, child protection is everybody's business. Let's go now to the Assistant Director at the National Family Services. That is Kathleen Sarkar, who is also with us. Good afternoon to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kathleen Sarkar, the Assistant Director, National Family Services Division of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. I remember when I first joined National Family Services back in August of last year, and we had started to plan our national parenting program. I was told, get in touch with Rondell Fields. Whatever you do, get in touch with Rondell Fields. Make sure you get to, you acquaint yourself with him and you develop that relationship. Because he is a very dynamic gentleman and he will definitely support what you're doing. And as part of our parenting program, we started last year with one section or one program that dealt specifically with men, and we have continued that this year. And what I have tried to do with every program that we have initiated or that we are about to initiate, we have an element of the concerns that the men have in our society. Because we see it every day. We see it when we provide psychosocial support. And one of the main things that we see coming out is that the men don't want to come for the counseling. They say that's not part of their, they just don't see the relevance of it or the importance of it. So we are hoping that in whatever we can do, whatever programs that we initiate now, that we encourage and we support our men to come forward and to be part of the process. Because it is about family, it's about parenting, it's about all of us coming together. And we can't do it alone. National Family Services cannot do it alone. We don't have the resources. And we really need the support of all of those, all of you here present. And we continue to look forward to that support. And we will be engaging you all as we continue to roll out our projects and our programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathleen Sarkar. And our final facilitator, but by no means least, is the Deputy Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, Mr. Vijay Gangapasad. Mr. Vijay Gangapasad, the floor is yours. Is Mr. Gangapasad online with us? All right, it appears that Mr. Gangapasad is not online with us. So we're going to move swiftly. We're actually doing pretty good time. We're going to move swiftly to the next part of the proceedings now that we've met our facilitators. And we're going to deal with some of the issues that you want addressed that have been knocking about in your mind. You have the experts now, so you have an opportunity to put the question to them. Feel free to use the comment section in this video feed to ask your questions. Both Fazir and I will relay them to you. We want to say very quickly thanks to our friends at Trini Globe Media for making this broadcast possible, for facilitating us with all the technical matters. I'm going to hand over now to Fazir Mohammed, who also is going to be chairing the proceedings this afternoon. Fazir, you want to get the batting started in terms of the Q&A?
I don't think you should use a cricket analogy, given what was happening to the West Indies in St. Lucia, where I happen to be right now. Hopefully we'll have a better innings in our discussion here. Thanks, Jesse. Thanks very much for taking us through the first innings of our discussion. And if Mr. Gangapasad is joining us and he is available, we'll be happy to get his contribution. I believe we also have a Mr. Kirk Pierre of the Victim and Witness Support Unit. He might have been a late addition to our discussion. Mr. Pierre, if you are there with us, you have 3 minutes to make your contribution if you would like to do so now, sir.
Thank you very much, Fazir. The Victim Witness Support Unit has a mandate to deal with victims throughout Trinidad and Tobago. We also see that vulnerable groups and men and boys in this instance fall under vulnerable groups. Why is that? All our stats show that men and boys are in dire need of conversations and help. And we as a unit try as much as possible to facilitate and to steer men through any situation that they may be facing at this point in time. So any discussion that we could be involved in, we are glad for the invitation and also glad to be here this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pierre. And what we'll do, as we said, we are going to get into our discussion, because I think we want to discuss two particular areas of these issues, because there are many different angles that we could take it into. The issue of the points and the discussions and the recommendations that were raised at the JSC hearings of 2018. Are they just words on paper? Are we seeing implementation? Is it being accelerated? Is it stuck in just old talk? What are the issues there? And also the other part of it, and I think this is very relevant to the times that we are in, COVID-19, and how that is impacting on the various services or indeed the initiatives that are being rolled out or have been stuck now because of COVID-19 to further the situation, to create a more amenable or welcoming environment for men, for fathers, in going through the courts and dealing with issues, maybe very confrontational issues as well. Questions are coming in, so me being a dinosaur when it comes to those things, I know Jesse can handle those quite effectively. What I'll do, I'll raise a couple of questions, and I know everyone would have their mic muted. I'll pose the question to somebody in particular, and if anyone else wants to come in to add to that discussion, you can unmute your mic, and that will be an indication that you would wish to make a contribution as well. So what I'll do, when I pose a question to anyone specifically, whoever that person, hopefully you'll be able to answer, and if someone else wants to contribute, just unmute your mic. I will pause when that person has finished their contribution, and then you could come in. So that way we could ensure that we could get through as many areas as possible. If I could start with Siobhan Lewis. Siobhan, good of you to be with us once again in this discussion. How would you describe the environment when we talk about the family court, the court environment, when these issues of custody, and the very contentious situations that could arise between a man and a woman in a relationship that has deteriorated, and based on what would have happened at the JSC, based on COVID-19 and all these challenges, are we seeing an improvement in these circumstances specifically for fathers, for single fathers in Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Lewis?
Yeah, definitely. I would say there's some improvement for Zir. But the court system is made up of several arms. You have parties who are coming to the court seeking relief, and we need participation. So we have seen from that communication through the Fathers Association, now through the Single Mothers Association, there's some things that would have been discussed there in the GSC report that we have, the judiciary has taken on board and implemented. If I could raise one point, there's a point in the GSC report that speaks to ongoing training for judicial officers on the issue of gender bias and so on. And the judiciary, through its Judicial Education Institute, has continued to offer training to all of the judicial officers in the judiciary and the family court on specific topics in this area. There is training that was conducted on implicit bias a couple of years ago, right, which speaks directly to the conversation today. There was training conducted on emotional intelligence and how we deal with the gender issues that face the court today. I'm taking a few points of a document that was used for training for judges, masters, and magistrates that speaks to child custody and maintenance. And one of the points in that document says In custody matters, judicial officers are advised to bear in mind that custody is decided on what is in the best interest of the child, and the gender of the parent is not a relevant factor in determining which parent should have legal custody, right? This is directly out of a manual, a training manual conducted with judicial officers and shared with judicial officers thereafter, speaking specific to the issue of gender and how we perceive persons when they approach the court for relief.
Fazir, I also have a question for Siobhan Lewis. And this also is with regard to the family court itself. Someone asking, how the court has changed now that it is part of the high court infrastructure as opposed to no longer being part of the magistrates court infrastructure. How does that change, and how does it affect when you bring matters to the family court now?
But the dynamic is a little bit more complex than that. Traditionally, we have been accustomed to having family court matters heard based on where you live, right? The person who is applying for the matter would normally apply, if it's a summary matter, in the district in which you live. So if you're from Arima, you'll apply at the District Court of Arima, which we call the Arima Magistrate Court before, and so forth and so on. The intention of the Family and Children Division Act is to have all family matters heard in a family court. And that is what that transition that the person is describing there has begun. So all of the matters you would have normally go to a magistrate court to apply to be treated with, the intention is to now have that treated at a family court. So the family court has since that time rolled out from just Port of Spain, Cipriani Boulevard, where most people know it. There's now a family court in Tobago, which treats with all family court matters on the sister isle of Tobago. There's a family court soon to open in Princestown, which will treat with all family matters in that geographic location. And there's the intention to roll out further to cover the southern area, San Fernando area, and even going further to the east, right? So once that phase rollout is completed, all family matters will now be heard in a family court setting. It will no longer be heard in the magistrate court or district court jurisdiction as it's now called.
Thanks very much. Fazir, another question coming in from our viewers and listeners. This concerns, and this is a concern that has been raised time and time again, the fact that fathers are not being given enough time to bond with their children. They get 4 days in the month, the weekends, basically. And this person is saying this cannot be good for fostering a good relationship between a father and his children if he's allowed such limited time with them. I'm not sure who would want to respond to that, but perhaps we can hear from the attorney at law, as well as anyone else who would, perhaps from the Children's Authority as well, to weigh in on this issue of the limited time that fathers are given through the court rulings to see their children when family matters are being settled legally.
All right, well, I'll start. The issue of how much access you have to your child is dependent on the application that you make. So if you go to the court and you tell the court you only want every Saturday, you'll get every Saturday. But if you press and you ask the court and you say, listen, I want to see the child every other weekend from Friday to Sunday, overnight access, and I want to see the child during the week, unless there is a real reason for concern, the magistrate or the district judge or the judge listening to the matter in the family court is supposed to try to give access equally. Now, access would also govern, let's say the child has school and lessons and so during the week. There are practical considerations that the court will have to factor in. So where you might want to see your child, let's say every evening, it might be impossible because the child has to go to lessons. So how do you make up for that lost time? You would ask for overnight access over the weekend from Friday to Sunday. So what you have to do is really advocate for your rights for access. Anybody who says to you, well, if you leave your child, you're going to have to just accept every other weekend or every weekend. That is an incorrect assessment of the law. The strength of your application is dependent on how available you are and how you can prove to the court that you want to build a bond with your child wants to see you. I mean, I know I'm simplifying the answer. Like I said in my opening, every case is fact specific, but the fact that persons believe they are only entitled to weekend visits with their child if they are not the custodial parent is actually incorrect.
If I could just add,
I'll pass, yeah.
Go ahead, Rhonda.
Yeah, if I could just add to Ms. Rambajan, and what you said is right. Every case is different. You may have different facts and those things like that. And I must also agree with Mr. Lewis. I have seen changes when it comes to the court and the way they do things. And I mean, I'm glad to hear that they are taking. I'm glad you read that document there. It shows that they're actually following the mandate of the Joint Select Committee. However, while these things are still taking place, I can still say that there is some level. I don't even want to call it bias anymore because I have honestly seen the family court, particularly since we started a partner with Mr. Lewis. I've seen them make efforts to reach out to us. We've been able to have brilliant conversations. And we must understand that culture is something, reculture, the way people think is not an easy thing to do. So even I would say from the administrative side as Mr. Lewis and those who are putting on all the reculturing, you're talking about years of practice the judicial officers may have conducted their way in a particular manner. So I'm saying this to say that while we're saying these things, I'm certain it's going to have men who looking on saying, but that is not my case. The magistrate does treat me this way, the magistrate does treat me that way. So I'm here to say that, yes, I understand that there are some magistrates that still, possibly even though they're being cultured or recultured now, are still pressed in their ways. But I must say that I have seen the introduction of some masters now into the family court system who are really concerned, who are really putting fathers where they are supposed to be. I wish I could call the names right now, but I am seeing it. Do I want to see more of it? It should be the golden standard. Every single magistrate should understand that the best interest of each child has nothing to do with gender. And I hope they really take that reculturing session that Mr. Lewis just spoke about there seriously, because therein lies the problem. I mean, we understand the legal process and who has the better adjudicator and who knows what they want, and men and women also need to know how to petition for what they want, but there must be that general sense from the magistrate to allow both mother and father fair hearing and do genuinely what is in the best interest of the child.
Jesse, if you just allow me to come in here to pose a question to Ms. Rambajan, just on that point, and I want to afterwards ask a question of Sergeant Small in relation to dealing with these issues in the field, because I think it's important, and for all of you sending in your questions, by the way, Jesse's taking note of them, and you won't be ignored. Of course, not every question will be answered, because of course we have to be mindful of our limited time, and I want to remind our other panelists, because it's a sizable panel, if you feel you want to come in with a contribution, either unmute your mic or raise your hand so that Jesse or someone else will be able to see you with an indication that you'd like to speak, and we'll be more than happy to give you an opportunity to make a contribution, because it's all about improving the knowledge base with this situation. Ms. Rambajan, not that I'm asking you to pronounce upon the court, I don't want to get you in trouble on that side of things, but as far as that whole reculturizing, because is it enough to say, well, it will take time, because there are fathers right now who will be experiencing being treated as if they are second-class citizens, who will feel that they lack the wherewithal to argue their case authoritatively. They lack the financial resources to get proper legal representation, and they might feel they are fighting a losing cause, because even if it's a process of that reculturing, they are in the situation right now and they're being treated like dirt.
I agree with that sometimes the quality of your representation and your ability to really advocate for your rights in the court might be equivalent to the size of your pocket. It is a very unfair position, but education is always key. Right now, there is a paradigm shift. We're seeing where, as Rondell said, we have masters who are willing to listen. what has happened as a result of the training sessions that the judiciary, in my respectful view, has done, is they are now more cognizant to ask the father a question. So where before assumptions and prejudice might come in, they are willing to say, okay, how often do you see your child? When do you work? Do you shift? What about overnight access? So that persons are now trying to use the right father to ensure that everybody is equally treated before the judge or the magistrate, as the case may be.
Thank you very much for that. If I could bring in Sergeant Small, and as I said, everyone,
did you all get my answer?
Yes, we did. We got your answer loud and clear, and thank you very much for that, Ms. Rambajan. Sergeant Small, when you are out there in the field, is there a bias? Is there a gender bias against men when police officers have to intervene in a situation of a relationship, issues of custody and so on? Is there a gender bias by officers in favor of men? And if that is so, or is that being improved? Is that being improved?
Sergeant Small, before you answer, I just want to remind everyone, please mute your mics. Only the person who is speaking at the time should have their mic live and active. I'm seeing someone who I think is called Okay, Robbie, you've muted your mic. Everyone, please mute your mic so that we can hear and not get feedback. All right, Sergeant Small, the floor is yours.
Yes, I just want to say that as far as I'm aware, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is an organization that believes in impartiality. Notwithstanding that, I have heard on the ground that people felt as though, the police pick a side. Really and truly, that is not the standard of the organization. We believe in treating everybody equally. But, it have had situations where persons allege that they find the police pick a side. Really and truly, we have to use discretion in every situation, really and truly. And, generally, I just want to reiterate that it's not the standard of the police to pick a side and to be impartial and whatever. We promote treating everybody equally.
And of course, Sergeant Small, that based on your response, that we're getting a lot of responses where people are saying that their experience is exactly the opposite. Of course, we're not going to call any names or anything like that. But if I could bring in Acting Superintendent Guy Allen into the discussion while Jesse is looking at some of the other questions that are coming in. What perspective do you offer to this? Because so often it appears, Acting Superintendent, that it seems to be an issue of how people feel they are being treated in the system. It's all well and good to say that on paper, XYZ or ABC. But if when I go, I get in something totally different by the attitudes and the way I'm being treated, what is your own perspective in relation to this? Because this seems to come to the very heart of the situation when we're talking about JSC recommendations and situations made worse by COVID-19 and so on. What is your perspective on this, Acting Superintendent?
One of the things I want to say is that JC is correct. When police officers take an oath, we take an oath to be impartial and to conduct our investigations in a particular manner. However, over the years, because society before would look at women in a particular way. They look at woman, a female, as the better parent. But the parent, it has been shifting over the years, and it is very good to see that. The courts are looking at the facts that are before them, and they are making decisions. One thing I want to bring to the floor, and I am hoping that it can desist. We have some custody battles that are taking place in the court, and children are being used, for want of a better word, as pawn in these matters. When it comes to custody battles, you would have where parents have visitation rights. And when that child goes to that parent for a particular weekend, and that child comes back, we have parents putting children to lie down naked on beds and examining their private parts to see whether or not the father would have interfered with them and that kind of thing. I'm asking parents to desist from putting children through that kind of trauma. We need to understand co-parenting skills. We need to seek their assistance because the courts have co-parenting sessions, and we need both male and females to participate in these sessions so that they can be better parents. It makes the Child Protection Unit investigations very difficult when we have these situations arising.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, go ahead.
Let's chime in again.
Sure.
We definitely in society have to realize that we are all to blame. Where are the police coming from? Where are the judicial officers coming from? Coming from society, the way we are cultured in society as well. I understand the challenges that fathers and mothers will say, well, are the police against me, this one against me. But there's some of the things that we have been culturally taught as boys and girls and how to respond to certain things is that when people get into these public places, that is why they treat a man in this way, they treat a woman in another way. So generally, we as a society have to start thinking differently. Look at the instance, where, and I just use this as an example. When it comes to loss of life, we've seen instances where a man may take the life of a woman in the past, in recent. And then you see the vice versa, a woman taking the life of a woman. And there's two different social responses. Some people say something, some people say nothing. So we, even in the society, have to realize that because we, not one, educating ourselves on the topic, there are plenty of men, I will tell you, I represent men. I give my life for men in Trinidad and Tobago. I know every story you could think about. I've seen the worst. And sometimes it may be an issue of really bias against them, but sometimes it's lack of education. Fellas, let me be real. Let me be real too. Sometimes we put so many shows, so many events like this out there, so many Telegram chats for years and years and years. And you see 20 men will come and 100 women will come. So we have, I'm not blaming men and saying, but this is a reasoning for men to have to now suffer bias. But if we don't stand up, if I didn't stand up, you feel my son would have been downstairs right now? You have to stand up and say, this is my right as a parent, and no court, nobody could take it away from me. If we continue to complain and say this one bias and that one bias, had we done this and not strategically started to show the bias and not strategically started to bring statistics and not strategically go before the JSC, we wouldn't be having this discussion now. We wouldn't have had any statistics now. Now we've put the judicial officers in a position that they have to listen. But sometimes, men, we must take responsibility because we do nothing. I will use as an example for you. Last year when COVID was taking place, the family court reached out to me, Mr. Lewis himself, and said, Mr. Fields, you see COVID coming, plenty men going to lose their job and they may have warrants coming for them. Let us do a live. The family court did a live with me for over an hour. The Chief Justice made an order out there showing men that, hey, if you're going to lose your job, come out, say something from now. So before something happens, you wouldn't end up in issues. Every single week, Mr. Lewis had to call me because the response was poor. So, I mean, we all have to share in the responsibility of when we as men don't take action, and also in the instances where there are the systems that are biased against them as well.
Thanks for that, Rondell. I wanted to go to Rondell Gregoire Rupchan in a moment about children being used as pawns by both sides. But Jessie, I think you wanted to raise a question or a particular point.
Actually, let's deal with that issue with the Children's Authority, and then I'm going to put on alert our friends from the Ministry of Social Development, something to do with single fathers being able to access welfare support from the system. So you have some time to pull your information together to respond. But Rondell Gregoire Rupchan, the floor is yours. Children being used as pawns in bitter custody battles.
Thank you so much. And I want to endorse the sentiments of the speakers that went before me on this topic and urge parents, fathers, as well as mothers, both parents, we have a responsibility to our children. Big part of what the authority is guided by is the best interest of the child, and very, very important is the voice of the child. So a child being used as a pawn, for want of a better term, really is to the detriment of that child. What we owe to a child and what a child endorses best is for his or her parents to love each other or to be civil to each other. I at the authority, cases come to us where the children are identified as being abused because of an accusation that a parent may have made. And what we found is that has only done harm to the child. As Superintendent Garland said, you know, we put our child through very traumatic experiences. I also want to commend Mr. Fields, because in cases where we've had similar experiences, or even in other cases where fathers felt that they needed to be represented, he held their hands. He brought them to us. He walked them through the process with us to be able to help us to find the solutions that will be in the best interest of the child. So I just want to urge, our children are not to be used in the custody matters. The authority does not advocate in the custody matters. What we do is we look at the best interests of the child, and we provide the information that we find to the court if they so request. So let's focus on the best interests of children. Thanks.
Now to hear from our representatives from the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. A question here, single fathers experiencing a certain amount of bias and having a challenge accessing social services and welfare support that would normally very easily go to mothers, but for some reason, single fathers are having a challenge. They say that there is bias in the system. We need you to respond to that, please.
I'm not sure if Mr. Ganga Prasad is here with us, but Ms. Sarkar, I don't know.
I believe, yes, Ms. Sarkar, Kathleen Sarkar.
Can you
Perhaps
shed
you can
any
respond?
light on that? Ms. Sarkar, are you there with us?
Okay, we may have lost her. Fazir, while we're waiting for our state representatives, there also have been several questions coming in terms of what exactly are police supposed to do when access orders are breached, and there are variations on the theme. There's a feeling that the police respond swifter when a woman is reporting the breach against a man, as opposed to when a man reports a breach against a woman. Perhaps our law enforcement friends could clarify that particular situation. ASP Guyalane or Sergeant Small?
I would respond first. Sometimes when people say that the police would have taken the side of the woman, I don't want to say that, because I have not seen that. Where I sit, as soon as someone comes with an order and the order is breached, police act swiftly. You understand? So it doesn't matter whether it's the father coming or the mother coming, because we have instances where either sex would come and the police would always respond. Yes?
Okay, Sergeant Small, is it from your own experience, is there an inherent bias, not an intended bias, but an inherent bias?
I just want to say in relation to access order, as my knowledge is concerned, it's not a criminal offense, meaning that the police could charge you, like for example, a protection order or interim order, or you know, the access order is something different, and what the persons usually have to do is go back to the court and inform the court. I mean, when the police get involved, the police could try to persuade the other person that here what's going on. You're in breach of what the court have asked you to do. We could make certain notes in the station diary. We could even appear any matter as a witness to indicate that you would have tried to explain to this person that it's important that they respect the court order, but it's not a criminal offense. So they usually have to go back to the court for the magistrate to, you know, further enforce the fact that the person must comply with the order or make different decisions in terms of that particular case.
Thank you very much for that, Sergeant. I want to bring in as well, even as the questions continue to come in, and by the way, we've reached 1 hour in our discussion, so you see how quickly time flies with all of the many different issues, and I'll alert our panelists as well, as they probably would have been told ahead of our discussion this evening, that at the end of the discussion, we'll give everyone 1 minute to just highlight what they see to be the key point, the key issue that they would like to leave with our audience this evening, many of whom are very emotional about situations, many of whom are actually caught up in different situations. So I'll ask each one of you, in the same way that we started our discussion, to give yourself a minute or maybe less than a minute. That might be a very simple point that you would like to leave our audience with. So that is coming up in about 45 minutes time. So we have some time to stew on that particular issue. But I'd like to bring in Shameen Howe, of the Single Mothers Association to give me your take on this discussion that you're hearing, because it does seem to be a lot about the emotion of the issue and the breakdown of a relationship, and whether or not more can be done, more should be done to have a greater willingness for collaboration and dialogue. Ms. Howe, do you see that possible from your perspective?
Thank you, Mr. Fazir. My take on this topic that we are discussing this afternoon is, as a society, we have moved away from God, our creator of all things, above the earth, on the earth, and under the earth. And his original creation was for, after him, God, man, woman, then the children. And that cycle has been broken, right? And there is nothing that we can do to repair it unless we go back to God. So the fact that we have broken homes, and it has broken down into this where there's a row between the fathers and the mothers and the custody battles and all these things happening, and who gets support and who doesn't get support, and the biasness and all these things that are happening now. It is not the plan that God had for our lives. So we have strayed away from it. And honestly, we have persons, we have good mothers, we have good fathers. We have bad mothers, we have bad fathers. And it's, as Mr. Fields said earlier, we have to come to terms with our thinking and realize that it is not about the mothers or the fathers, it's about the children and how disastrous it could be when they behave how they behave. And then the children are the victims in all of this. And we need to understand that and work towards the best thing for the outcome of the children. And I believe that all of that has sent in the last maybe 30 years and more, our children, the present children of society, down the wrong channels, the broken homes and all these things. So we as parents have to stop thinking about ourselves, male or female, and studying to spite each other and work towards making it best for the particular children or child that they have in their home. If they cannot be together for whatever reason, they need to look at the best outcome for the children. And to add to that, one of the things that I don't think a lot of people understand when they speak about single fathers and single mothers, a single father is someone where the mother has died or the mother has left completely and gone. And a single mother is the very same, where the father has died or the father has left the family completely. Co-parenting is where you have two parents that are meeting, trying to make middle ground towards the children. So when fathers go to court and say, I would like to get help for this child, let's say John Smith from social services, and then the mother go on with the child on the next side, she wants to seek the same help as well for this very same child. So this is where all the issues may arise, where they find favoritism from the ministries and these different things, and even the police services. But we need to understand the difference between single father, single mother, and co-parenting. Once the parents are there, they're not single. They are co-parenting. And that, I just wanted to leave that.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Howe. Yes, Ms. Rambajan, go ahead, please.
Yeah, sorry, I got knocked off for a bit there, but there was something I wanted to contribute after Superintendent Guyalane and Sergeant Small spoke. There is a misapprehension as to the powers of the police when it comes to the enforcement of orders. I will say it categorically. If a woman goes to a police station and she has an access order that is not being enforced, the officers will jump in their Jeep, go to the father's house, use suitable language to get him to open the gate, and then tell him the mother have right to the child, hand over the child, or we're gonna lock you up. Now, usually the woman will go to the station after she tries to get the child and the gentleman refuses. So now he's worked up because you bring police to my place. And he starts to act in an aggressive manner. And there's a confrontation between the police and the individual because there is no understanding on the part of the police that this man is frustrated because he just managed to get his child, and the mother of the child comes with the police to get back the child. So we need to move away from this rhetoric and this defensive position that the police applies it across the board fairly. They do not. People come to me because they feel that they've been treated unfairly by the police. The police make decisions on cases. They will hear a side of the story, and it's human nature. It's not that I am saying that the police is wrong. Whoever gets their story to the ears of the police first is the person more likely to be believed, because you are predisposed. The police officer is predisposed to believe in the person who has come to the station, and the person who has come to the station is more than likely the person who will take the police back to the home both ways. And the other parent is already agitated. So it goes from a simple situation of handing over a child to a full court matter. So we have to be very honest, and we cannot say that there is no bias in the police service. There are parents who make, and I agree with Superintendent Guyalin, that there are persons who make false allegations against parents, and they don't understand what they are doing to the mental psyche of a child. I don't think people understand that when you make an allegation of sexual abuse against a parent, a false allegation with the intention of turning a custody matter in your favor, that child is going to be subjected to a very invasive medical procedure. That child is going to be traumatized. But you, as the parent who feel you are in the right, you are saying to that child, you are a victim. Your father or your mother do this. And you know what starts happening? That child starts to believe it. And we end up in a situation where in your battle for custody, you have destroyed a child. So I want persons to understand, if we're having a fruitful, honest discussion, let us be honest, all right? There is bias in the police service. There is bias in the court. There is bias among my brethren. I might look at a matter and give a particular advice. Another attorney might look at the matter and give a different advice. You know, so we need to be honest that at the end of the day, bias is across the board. So as a consequence, what we need to do is to ensure we ourselves do not perpetuate the same bias and prejudice when we try to fix the situation. So I just wanted to say that and clarify so that I'm ripping the Band-Aid off. There is bias. The police does move unfair sometimes. Some people who say this might be legitimate in saying it. I'm also going to rip the Band-Aid off and say that people make false allegations and they don't realize the potential repercussion they will have on the child. So I just want to lay it out there and let the discussion go where it goes.
Sure. Now that you've ripped the, hold on a second, Sergeant Small. Just before you, because it's, I knew once the Band-Aid was ripped off and the blood started to flow, what would happen. So the idea is, let's make sure and keep it structured, because we don't want to get into a situation where it's a constant toing and froing, and our audience at the end of the discussion are none the wiser as to whether or not the circumstances are actually improving. What do they have to do on their end? Do they have to be more responsible, as Rondell Fields is suggesting? So before Rondell comes, I know Rondell, you wanted to raise a point. I just want to put Mr. Michael Stewart on alert that I'm coming to you next to get a perspective from you. And then I want to go back to Siobhan Lewis in the family court to actually give us a sense as to whether or not the issues that you've been hearing, are they being properly addressed? Can the court actually do anything? Can the court actually be an advocate or can influence in a particular way? So just letting everybody be aware. And of course, Jesse's taking note of some of the questions. As soon as she feels she has some appropriate questions, we'll come with that as well. But Rondell, I know you had your hand up. If you could go ahead, please, before we hear from Sergeant Small, and then I'll go to Mr. Stewart and then Mr. Lewis. Go ahead, please, Rondell.
Mr. Rambajan was saying, but I want to add in this way. Every system is streamlined to be perfect. So if you ask someone from a particular division, they will tell you what the division ought to do, right? So the thing is the human implementation into that system. Because as I said, based on the way as humans, we are cultured. We may be cultured as a, and I'm not making no excuse to the police because I believe at times they are very biased. I just be running them down and making them out too. But we need to look at the root causes of things. It is because culturally, we believe that if a man is hurt or a man is impacted negatively, that men cannot be victims. So a police is prone more because of his culture as a man in society growing there, that a woman definitely is a one that is seen as a victim, but a man cannot be a victim. So we have to look at the root cause of the bias in all those systems, because the system in everywhere, court, if I know the standard for the court, the standard for the police, the standard for every service, they will say that they are fair and they are balanced and they're whatever. To speak on the same public assistance, we fought for fathers to be able to get public assistance. The law said that there is not to be any bias. The law said mothers and fathers could get it. But the culture, even though there was legislation, the culture instructed the dictation of fathers can't get it because they are the head of the homes and they are male. And it stayed so for years until we advocated, lobbied, and pinpointed that the legislation didn't say anything like that. So I am showing you that is the human implementation to these systems which causes bias. And it shows a reflection of what we learn in our society. But let's look at our next root cause. Yes, it has bias in the police. Yes, it has bias in the court and all these things. When are we going to take responsibility as mothers and fathers and say that we're just immature? We have to go by the police for this, we have to go by the police for that, I go and carry in court. Our first response, and we started doing that in Fathers Association when people call us and they haven't gone to court, is to send them to a mediation center in the community, send them to some place where they can have some restorative action. We cannot continue to expect the court to parent our children. We need to grow out of that as mothers and fathers, and it's the same thing. This is what you think leads to someone taking their child lying down naked and inspecting them, looking for something to make a false allegation. The fact that they're looking for points to win. We need to start co-parenting as mothers and fathers and get mature. This is the only way this will be fixed. Yes, we have the systems of the court, we have adjudicators, and we expect them to be fair. But we, as mothers and fathers, must do the mature thing for the best interest of our children. We only have them for 18 years.
Randall, just hold your thoughts for a moment, because as I said, Michael Stewart, president of Beam and Tobago, is also with us, and I omitted to mention Kirk Pierre of the Victim and Witness Support Unit, who's also with us. I think we need to hear from these two gentlemen as well before we continue with maybe some more questions that Jesse may have. Mr. Stewart, you're hearing a lot of the discussions, the issues that are being raised. What is your perspective? What do you see as the key point that you feel needs highlighting at this time?
I think that, and I support Randall in many of those matters he raised, because even here in Tobago, I've heard of where a man would go for help because he might be the person who is the parent responsible for the child, and have been turned away because they said that he's a male, and they didn't make arrangement for if he's a male who's taking care of a child as a father. If you are a mother, in fact, the very phrase that one person in the office said is that if you are a woman, you would have gotten it, but therefore it cannot be given in this case. So, and I believe that it may not be law, it may be the culture itself that drives that figures that is how it has to be. And we have to now change that kind of concept in that way. And that's one. The other thing is, in order for us to be able to reinstate fathers to the way how I think that fathers are supposed to have their role, is that we've got to recognize that we are part of the process. This thing that a man is unnecessary, because let's say a woman may be working for more money than the man and so on. But when a child is without a father, that child has some emotional, personality issues that will grow up missing that father. And the same thing if he has to miss a mother. So co-parenting happens to be it, even though the parents are not together. But we must push that co-parenting concept and doctrine.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Stewart. If I could go to Mr. Pierre from the Victim and Witness Support Unit, which we really wouldn't like to hear from at all, because if we're hearing from you, it means that something has happened, as somebody being a victim and a witness to something that would have happened. But from your own perspective, Mr. Pierre, I'm sure you're hearing a lot of emotion, a lot of important points being raised. What can you add to our discussion this afternoon that could help move the process forward? Because at the end of the day, that's what we want to do.
Yeah, so first of all, men need to be comfortable to know that it is okay to feel other emotions other than anger. So sometimes I think that the only emotion that validates our masculinity is when I show that I'm angry. Men usually come for help when they think that the ship is sinking or has sunk, right? But when you ask them why you come now, we found that the culture and the perception plays a part. So have you engaged the court before? No, but I have heard that the court don't like men, right? Well, why have you now? You know, so a lot of things that are based on perception, maybe cultural history, but we found that based on the emotional intelligence of some men, especially when dealing with fatherhood, the fear of losing their children is so big that fear almost stops them from seeking intervention and seeking help. So these conversations, I think in the chat, I see Dr. Moultrie spoke about the relationship between a father and a child, or the child that was, the father that was once a child. How is that relationship between his parent and himself? And is there a form of projection that comes out after in terms of how do I then parent, or how do I then treat my spouse when faced with conflict? So I think the emotional aspect of it, the psychological aspect of it, and the fact that men's ability to show a particular type of emotions, I think prevents us at times from actually seeking the help that we need.
I hear your point, and thank you very much for that, Mr. Pierre. But just to take it back to the point that where I started the discussion, that we know it's a process, but there are people who feel that they are victims of it right now, and they want solutions right now. So if I could go to Mr. Siobhan Lewis, the family court manager, as far as and Jesse, you can intervene right after this if you feel you have some relevant questions that you'd like to bring up. Is there a willingness? I don't know if I'm asking the question the wrong way. You could point me in the right direction. Is there a willingness by the court to not just see the issues on paper of justice being blind and a balanced perspective? Is there that willingness to, one, treat people fairly on both sides, and two, also maybe to move people to, rather than confrontation, to have conversations and co-parenting? Is that within the remit of the family court at all?
I'm glad you asked that. So let me say first, I agree with Ms. Rambajan, the contribution she made. What we don't acknowledge, we can't fix, right? So as institutions, organizations, individuals, if we don't acknowledge our biases, if we don't acknowledge the way we serve the public, we can't fix it, we can't address it, right? The second thing is the fact that the judiciary could look at some of its activities, as I mentioned earlier, over the last couple of years, and when compared to the JSC report, see that there are things that we have done, we've gone out and done. It tells us that we are speaking the same language. We want to achieve the same thing, right? It's not that one informed the other, but we are thinking with the same objective in terms of what we want to achieve. But from what all of the panelists are saying, it is not enough. While it is necessary, it is not enough for a judge, a master, or magistrate to want that. It is not enough for the Fathers Association, the Mothers Association, and all the other associations to want that. Rundle pointed out that in the last couple of years, we've been talking, we've been having conversations behind the scenes. In fact, I'll add another dimension to it. The Fathers Association, the Mothers Association, Single Mothers Association, and the Family Court have been speaking behind the scenes and planning how can we fix these issues that we have. But the people who need to talk the most, Wazir, are the parents, right? Those are the people who need to talk to each other the most. And when persons come to court, and the family court, and this is one of the reasons we are rolling the family court across Trinidad and Tobago, is so people can not just have access to a master and a judge, but they can have access to the services that are in the family court, which include social workers, includes probation officers, it includes mediators. And when people come to the court, judicial officers refer parties to these services, but we need people to participate in the process. I am not going to take the ostrich in the sand approach, put my head in the sand and pretend everything is perfect for you. The fact that people are in the court, it's because there is separation. And when there is separation, there is hurt, there's emotional distress, there's trauma. And when you're going through a season like that, people sometimes act illogically and irrationally, right? And I'm saying to the persons listening in, when you come to court, if that is your first stop, and you are referred to social services, you are referred to mediation, participate. Don't just come and throw barbs and accusations at each other. Participate, because social services is there to assist you with the trauma that you're going through, so that when you get to the stage of mediation, you can actually sit down and have a conversation about what works best, rather than a judge or a master or a magistrate having to impose an order on top of you at the end of the day. When people talk, they get the most out of it, the experience. But when people come and they're fighting with each other, that is where problems arise, because now the court has to peel back all of the layers to find what is really happening in this household. I was making a point to someone recently. I told them in one of the custody battles, early custody battles, is with the story of King Solomon and the two women who were fighting over the one living child. King Solomon, in all his wisdom, he had it, I don't want to say a bit easier, but he had one parent who was still saying, let the child live, while the other was saying, cut the child in half. And that allowed him to say, okay, this is the parent. But in today's environment, in a lot of the cases, you have the both parents saying, cut the child in half. And then we asking, as Rondell said, well, why the court can make a decision one way or the other. We all need to be on the same page where this is concerned. So yes, while the court is working and looking internally and reflecting and making adjustments to its processes and training its judicial officers, and while institutions and associations are talking, the parents also need to get involved in it.
Let me ask Jessie if we have any questions that she thinks might be relevant to
yes, we have many questions for Zir.
Sure.
We're going to try to wrap them up among common themes. One of the key issues that I'm seeing is the fact that there are fathers very concerned about their children's safety, where it appears that the mother is the abuser, or the mother is the person putting the child in a dangerous living environment. And it seems as though the father's cries for help to protect their children in those instances keep falling on deaf ears. There's also someone introducing the issue of substance abuse, whether substance abuse plays a role in many of the custody battles that we see going on, whether it's either or both parents who are substance abusers and children getting caught in the middle of that. So I'm not sure who would want to tackle that, if we would want to hear from our legal expert as well as from the Child Protection Unit head, and maybe the Victim and Witness Support Unit head, and of course, again, from Siobhan Lewis and any other expert with us this evening who thinks that they can shed a light on those two instances. Renuka Ramajan, you want to get the book?
I would actually suggest that Ms. Rupchan start the answer to that question when we talk about allegations, because that's the role and function of the authority, and we could always jump in.
Sure, Ms. Gregoire Rupchan, you please go right ahead.
Absolutely. I actually had my mic unmuted following the protocols for Zir. So thank you for that. When a report comes in about abuse, the next step is to investigate. So we have built into the functions of the authority a way to understand whether or not what is reported to us is in fact. And so we explore those circumstances. But I want to go back to a point we made earlier in exploring some of those circumstances, especially when it involves sexual abuse allegations against a child. There are steps that we have to take. And one of those, as Renuka indicated, is a very invasive type of medical, it's a forensic interview. So I urge parents, before you make these allegations, be certain that they are not in any way malicious, because the child may be at stake. But if we go out and investigate and we find that there are matters that of abuse to a child, it doesn't matter who made the report, and it doesn't matter whether the accused that we have then substantiated the allegation is the mother or the father. What will guide the authority is the best interest of the child. When we determine that a child is at risk, assuming that the matter is substantiated, our next step is to mitigate that risk. And we'll explore whether we can have the child remain in a family environment, a friend, an uncle, an auntie, a grandmother, while we continue to explore. And we work very closely with Ms. Guy Allen and the CPU, because they are the ones who will bring the perpetrators to justice. If it is we have not substantiated the allegations and the matter is before the court, based on the court's request, we will report that to the court, because the court is the one with the ultimate decision. So what I would urge parents to do, as we've established the theme here today, is to have the conversations with each other and let the driver of those conversations be the best interest of your child. If you can talk it out, if you can find a way to have those conversations with the child at the center, we may not make it to the court. We may make it instead to a mediation session. We may have a conversation. We may seek out parenting. I've seen in the chat persons putting links that speak to, how we can get access to parenting information. We can lift our levels of maturity and engage in those conversations for the sake of the children. When it gets to the authority, we will investigate and we will take steps to mitigate risk to a child if it is substantiated.
Well, it seems that it's almost as if we're getting in the area of that psychological discussion about that whole issue about winning and about who feels that they have to win in this particular issue and the emotions that are tied into it. I don't know who else would like to come in on this particular situation to advocate one way or the other, because it really has deviated a little bit from what our intention was, talking about the JSU report and the COVID-19 challenges. Because I think what we are realizing, and I think Rondell, you want to come in now, is that the real issue comes down to human relationships between the man and the woman. Something has gone desperately wrong, and either their willingness or their unwillingness to mediate, to discuss in the best interest of the child. I was just reading a bit of a chat where someone says he just wants to be part of his princess's life. Whoever his partner is or was, she might have a different view to his perspectives, and invariably that's what it comes down to. So Rondell, before we continue with our panelists, reminding them. Yes, go ahead, Jessie. Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to tack on to what you just said, point that you made, and it looks as though the parents involved in these custody battles do not understand how they should treat each other and how they should execute the orders of the court. And it appears, based on some of the comments I see coming in from our listeners and our viewers, it looks as though people play fast and loose with the rules and the orders of the court, and they interpret them very, very freely to the disadvantage of one parent or the other. And that, I think, lies at the heart of much of the bitterness that some people may feel, and the pain that is being experienced on both sides. And perhaps this door that is open for interpretation is at the heart of a lot of the trouble that people are experiencing. Because if the court says that you can visit your child, whether you're the father or the mother with the visitation rights, at a particular time of the week, for how many days of the week, but the parent who has primary custody is saying, well, yes, the court said that, but I am telling you that you must do this in a particular place at a particular time, otherwise you can't get the child. That's the kind of conversation coming through on the chats, on Facebook, as well as on the Zoom chat as well. Rondell, I think you want to respond to of that? Because I'm sure you would have heard that from many of the men who come to you seeking assistance.
All right. Well, before I respond to that, Jesse, I just want to pitch a little back to the JSC pertaining to what Ms. Rupchan said, and point out a very important part of one of our recommendations when it came to false allegations of a sexual nature.
Sorry, I can't hear Rondell. You're too low. I can't hear you.
Hold on, Rondell, if you could just speak up a little bit, because I think one of our participants is not hearing you clearly. And just don't forget everybody else, if you could just mute your microphones, please. Go ahead, please, Rondell.
Right. What I was saying, I mean, we know the gold standards for parents to work together. I just want to pitch back to the JSC. When we raised the JSC, the danger of the sexual allegations against a parent, false sexual allegations against a parent, and we need to have legislation to protect parents and those regarding malicious accusations. And I must say, the AG was supposed to be here, one of his representatives, but before I received a call from the AG's office, a senior person who did say that they will sit with the Fathers Association, because this is also a concern to them. Another the issue that will raise at the JSC, they will examine this, and also the recommendations, particularly those pertaining to that sexual nature, because we are concerned about, yes, the sexual allegations, but we also must be very concerned, and I've represented men and women. I've represented a father and a paternal grandmother who have been falsely accused, and though exonerated after legally, the social stain lasts forever. The social exoneration is something that is hard to get rid of. So in that regard, where legislation is missing, we must have legislation as a safeguard, but the golden standard parents must be mother and father trying to work together. How can you as a mother or a father look at your child, make a false allegation of such a nature, put your child through the trauma of such an invasive test just to maliciously destroy the other parent? If we, as human beings, mothers and fathers, care about our children genuinely, these things wouldn't even have to go to those distances to see failure within the system.
Fazir, if I may, and trust me, sometimes when these false allegations are made, as the police investigator, sometimes we can't prove it's a false allegation. And I say that to say, the parent would come and the parent would say, whether it be the mother or the father, they are going to say that their child told them of this sexual act that took place. When we at the Child Protection Unit make attempts to interview the child, even with the assistance of Children Authority, sometimes nothing is unearthed at all. But I want the public to understand this. The day a child says that mommy or daddy to tell the police, the investigation is going on. Remember, these children really need to watch the way we operate.
Thank you very much. You broke up just a little bit there towards the end, Acting Superintendent Guy Allen. Just in 30 seconds, if you could just repeat your main point, because the bandwidth was giving some trouble towards the end. Just repeat your point very quickly.
Right. My main point is that sometimes a parent will bring the child to the Child Protection Unit, indicating that the child would have disclosed to them, be it mother or father, that some other parent, one of the parents would have sexually assaulted the child. Sometimes when we interview the child, we are not able to have the child disclose to us that that did happen. Even with the assistance of Children Authority, at times, we are not able to get the child to disclose to us. Sometimes the children, they do not want to speak. But what I want to put out there, the day a child comes to the Child Protection Unit or the police and tells us that mommy or daddy would have told me to say this or that or the other, the inquiry is going to go down a different road. And that parent will have to be held accountable.
I also want to really quickly add to what Superintendent Guyland said. You also have to be prepared in such instances that when the experts sit from the CPU and from the Children's Authority to interview a child using all of the forensic interviewing methodology, and the child says to us, "Mommy told me to say so," or "Daddy told me to say so," then that's a different outcome as well, which the police will then take up. So we also have to be mindful that as much as we, and I'm reading the chat as well, as much as we may say that the mommy tell her to do this or the daddy tell her to say this, the reality is the trained personnel are going to get into the interview and get from the child as close as possible to what the child's truth and experience is, and then the consequences will play off. So we really have to be careful about the malicious responses as well, because there are directions that it could take us.
Jessie?
Yes, Fazir, I have a couple of questions that came in. People asking about the issue of maintenance orders, fathers managing their maintenance orders during this current COVID-19 pandemic period. And it's also something that our speakers would have alluded to when they made their opening remarks earlier today. I'm not sure which one of our experts would want to deal with this particular issue, but it is a real thing. Perhaps we could start with Siobhan Lewis from the family court.
Thanks, Jesse. One of the things we've been advocating or communicating to the public since last year at the start of COVID, if you have lost your job, if your income has been decreased, to please approach the court, make an application to the court, informing them of such, so that your maintenance order can be addressed accordingly, right? The court can't assume that because of COVID, you are unable to pay, right? And if you are unable to pay and you run into the arrears and the court is not aware of it, the normal process will flow where the recipient of the funds can apply for a warrant and that warrant is executed. So don't sit back if you've lost your job, if your income has been depleted and you are unable to keep up with your maintenance payments, approach the court where your order was made to make an application to what we call vary your maintenance order to address the current constraint that you're facing in that season.
And Mr. Lewis, if I could come in here, and forgive me if it sounds crude how I'm going to frame it, in the sense that, again, some people may be saying, why are you going to the court for? The court go favor she anyway. Two, I can't afford a lawyer to come and do no application for me. Just tell us briefly, is the process a simple one, a straightforward one, if you do have to make that application?
Sure, Fazir. Yes, the process is simple. You don't require an attorney to make these applications. If you have an attorney and you want an attorney to make the application, that's fine. But in these applications, you don't require an attorney. In the family court, we have what we call intake officers, right? And our intake officers take the information that you provide and they create that application to be placed before the judicial officer. In the district courts where there are still family matters being heard, there are also staff in the district courts who take that information via the telephone right now. You don't even need to go into the court building. Right? They take that information verbatim, they place it before the court and give you a date to have a virtual hearing before a judicial officer to explain your situation. There have been countless cases since COVID hit last year, where persons have made those applications, brought in letters from their employers, persons who are trade persons would have explained their current situations, and all case by case, the judicial officers have made decisions as to how the maintenance is to be treated with going forward.
Thanks very much for that, Siobhan Lewis. We're coming up towards the point where we'll be asking our panelists to give their 1 point contribution, and after that, after Ronald will also be giving his 1 point contribution, he'll move a vote of thanks for all of those involved in this exercise. So the time is going by very quickly, but in the couple of minutes that we have available, if anyone wants to raise another issue that they feel to be very relevant, that we haven't touched on in the course of our discussion, you can feel free to do so, unless, Jesse, if you have some questions that you'd like to encapsulate to present to any one of the particular members of our panel.
Just want to
we have
I think Sergeant Small wants to come in. Go ahead,
Yes,
please.
Sergeant Small, go ahead, please.
Just one key thing that I observed here during the pandemic is that persons, both male and female, have reached out to me. So they have a court order in place where the court outline how the access take place, right? And they are saying, so for example, one parent take the child or the children to the other parent for like a weekend, whatever. When the time service expire, the person is saying, no, well, we're in the midst of a pandemic. I don't want to put the child at risk. But the parent would have bring the child in the first place. So, you know, people are unreasonable, I realize. And it's just about you having a sense of reasoning and understanding that, you know, it's a court order. And just like how you want to safeguard the child and ensure that the child is safe and whatever, the other parent, I believe, will do the same. And I had to highlight this to both male and female throughout this pandemic. Just as you said as last week, a young man contact me and say, hey, Mr. Small, I can children for the weekend, but I don't want to send them back because afraid because we're in a COVID time. I said, no, brother. And the children, the mother would have bring the child in the first place. You have to, you know, comply with the court order. So people have to be reasonable and not wait for the police to tell you what to do, or the judicial officer or any stakeholder have to come and tell you, use some discretion, you know. I just want to reiterate too, this whole multi-sectoral approach, according to Mr. Fields, and I'm thankful for us being a part of this as TTPS, it's really critical because I just want to draw back reference to a particular matter. Once you have all the hands on deck, we bounced up a situation yesterday where you have a single mother almost unemployed because she's working for like real scrums right now, but she don't know how to go about accessing the grant. She's saying that the child father's name not on the birth paper. I mean, it has so much of a different thing, but I think there's real need, especially in the time of this pandemic, you know, for us to have more conversation and to work a little closer together. We're still a little too far-fetched from each other, and we could work together and, you know, cause the system to work for the best interest of the children.
Thank you very much for that, Sergeant. Jesse, maybe we could squeeze in one more question that you might have.
Yes. And I just want to ask Mukram. Mukram, could you please mute your mic because we're getting all your background noise. Thanks so much. The key question that someone is asking is, all of these recommendations that the GSC pulled together, and particularly those made by the Fathers Association, why are we not seeing them being implemented? Why are they not being streamlined and mainlined throughout the system yet, given that this report and the hearings were held since 2018? That's 3 years on, and we're not seeing real change happen. Or is it that it's happening so slowly? Not sure who would want to tackle that one.
Let me tackle that, because I mean, I wouldn't say that's entirely true, because the court pay system is actually one of the recommendations that was in the GSC committee. Also, during this time, you're seeing suspension of maintenances. That also was a GSC report recommendation as well. Yes, they haven't taken everything, and I agree with them. There are certain things, particularly when it's pertaining to parental alienation and people not allowing, particularly in post, I mean, before COVID even came in, pre-COVID, people weren't allowing persons access, breaking the access order. So whereas maintenance, in other words, there's a penalty of going to prison, there's no real punishment for breaking that access order. So these are some of the recommendations that yet to come we are still looking for. Another recommendation that we'd have made as well is the non-imprisonment for maintenance. People will, oh gosh, what do you mean by that? On our law books currently, there are other ways. They say a magistrate doesn't have to send a man to prison. You could seize his goods, seize his chattels. These are things that are already engraved in law. And sometimes you may blame the court. But when I go now, when I tell them these things and they show me these laws and they say your lawyer didn't ask for that, or your lawyer didn't apply for that, and in the instance of maintenance, having a conversation with the court again, I hear it's based on what your mother applies for. If the mother applies for a warrant to be taken out, or if they receive payment in chattels and goods. So there are some things that are on the legislation, that is in legislation, that are not being utilized as well. But there have been some things from the JSC that has been introduced. But I agree to an extent with the person who asked the question. There are a lot more things that needs to be introduced, like paternal leave, paid paternal leave, and a number of other things. We encourage people, and this is another thing for Zero. People will say so many things, single fathers not doing anything, and this one not doing anything. But if you go through that Joint Select Committee report, you will see the amount of recommendations on that Joint Select Committee. And as I said, right before we started, I had a commitment from a senior person from the AG to sit with us, go through our recommendations, go through the recommendations of the Joint Select Committee, and see what comes out of it. And definitely, people will say, Fields, that might be a talk shop. But if you know me, you know it ain't gonna be no talk shop when I go to sit down with them.
You better believe that. So time is going by very quickly, and we just have now. I'm going to take us through our 1 minute pointers. You could just simply highlight whichever issue you feel to be the most important that you'd like to leave us with, and then when we conclude, because Mr. Pierre will be our final contributor, I'll ask Rundle to move a quick vote of thanks, and then I'll throw it back to Jesse to wrap up our discussion. So if you could start with Sergeant J.C. Small, your contribution of 1 minute or less, please. Sergeant Small? Okay, not hearing Sergeant Small. If you could go on to Siobhan Lewis, if he can give his contribution, please.
Sure, Fazir. Fazir, I just want to read a short quote from Naftali Bennett, the new Prime Minister of Israel. He said twice in history in one of his opening remarks, we have lost our national home precisely because the leaders of the generation were not able to sit with one another and compromise. Each was right, yet with all their being right, they burnt the house down on top of us. What I want to leave the participants with is that beyond this conversation, we are going to continue to work as a court and judiciary with all of the organizations, and we want to work with parents for the benefit of our children. Let us not all be right in our own regards and burn our society down because we have raised broken children coming out of our poor decision making. Thanks for
Family Court Manager Siobhan Lewis, thank you very much indeed. Let's move now to the President of the Single Mothers Association, Charmaine Howe, please go ahead. Ms. Howe, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
What I would like to leave with the listening audience is action speaks louder than words. And when persons don't hear, they feel. Eventually they will feel when they don't hear. And as grown adults that has mothered and fathered children, they should come together for the benefit of the children always. And I believe that it should be made mandatory that if a parent is being found guilty of using the children as bait to affect each of the parents, there should be a mandatory charge of at least $10,000 or 6 months imprisonment. Because if they can't use their own thinking to stop it, then they should be forcefully stopped by the authorities. So maybe then they would listen and do the right thing. So the children will benefit throughout the situation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Howe. Attorney at Law Renuka Rambajan, if we could get your contribution, please.
I'll be very quick. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Some free legal advice. One, even though COVID is happening and there's a pandemic, every parent has the right to full access. You can vary the access. So the parent who has custody of the child cannot just say it's COVID and you can't get the child. If there is a false report, you could go to the police and make an allegation of wasteful employment of police time. So know your rights, find out, and enforce it. I wish everybody the best and happy Father's Day to all the fathers on the link for Sunday.
Free legal advice. I never thought I would experience that, but anyway, let's move along. Acting Superintendent Guy Allen, please give us your quick contribution. Thank you very much once again.
Right, my quick contribution here today to the listening public. There is a section of the Children Act that speaks about mandatory reporting. Far too often, children disclose sexual abuse to adults and the persons who are responsible for them, and they fail to make a report. Under the law, you are mandated to make a report to the police if you have reasonable cause to suspect or the child disclosed to you. Report it, because if down the road it is reported to the police, an investigation will be conducted and you can be arrested and charged. I am also asking that parents be mature and let us think about the welfare of the child, which should be paramount in any of our minds. It should be paramount. Sometimes what we look at bias in the police service, whenever a report is made, remember the police was not there. So the police have to take a side and make a decision. And sometimes when persons talk about bias by the police, it's really a party who did not get their way. So those are things that I want persons to be quite aware of at times. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Acting Superintendent Rundle. I know you'll be coming back with your quick vote of thanks in a couple of minutes, but your point that you'd like to leave us with.
And the major point to take away from this, parents work together. And I'm not talking to my fathers only, mothers, because as I've seen the chat and many fathers putting out there, well, if I want to work and the other person don't want to work, and they may have fathers also who be the one causing the problems. Mothers and fathers, put your past intimate relationship behind you and forge a parental partnership. Why are we taking this into an adversarial place? The court system is an adversarial place. So we're going to get bias, you're going to get all type of these issues. I'm asking you, we are the Single Fathers Association, or the Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago, rebranded now. We know the issues. So some of you may say, Mr. Peel didn't talk about this issue. I know the issues from foundation. It's about solution now. And I can guarantee you, the court is not the ultimate solution, you know. It's mothers and fathers working together in Trinidad and Tobago. We are in a pandemic. We are losing loved ones around us. I implore you to use maturity. If you all have issues with COVID and physical space, encourage that parent, if it's via Zoom time or so, to maintain that parental relationship. I beg of you, mothers and fathers of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thanks very much, Rundle. Let's move on to another RN, Rhonda Gregoire Rupchan, for your quick contribution, please.
Yes, the names are quite close, and I want to sentiments very, very vividly. Parents, we are responsible for taking care of our children. We are the society that is going to be responsible for protecting our children. And we, if we don't act, are going to be the ones that allow things to happen by our inaction. Let us work together. Let us work with our children in mind, and let us always, always be guided by the best interest of our child and not our own concerns. When we decided to become parents, or maybe the decision was involuntary, we didn't sign up with a manual, but what we have to do now is sacrifice, as we have been doing during the course of our child's life. We have to sacrifice ourselves for the child's best interest. So if we're guided by that, our children will do well, and they will see that in us, even when everything is not up to 100%, especially given our restrictions during COVID. So let's focus on our children.
Thank you very much indeed. Michael Stewart, President of Beam and Tobago, your final contribution, please. Mr. Stewart, are you there with us? Is Kathleen Sarkar there with us from the National Family Services? Are you there with us? All right, so let me leave the final word then with Kirk Pierre of the Victim and Witness Support Unit. Mr. Pierre, your final perspective.
Yes, Fazir. To all the men, in years to come, when your child turns into an adult, the reason that when he asks you, why did you not try harder to be in my life? The reason that you give him next 5-10 years will not make sense to him or her. So you have a responsibility. We understand that you do not have the tools right now, both emotional tools and information. There are agencies that would have spoken here this afternoon that will hold your hand and will walk you through any process that you deem difficult or that you may not have skills for. We, Trinidad and Tobago, aim for a win-win situation. Win-win always involves both parents as much as possible being in their child's life, so their child's ability to grow up with kindness and love is enhanced and enforced. Thank you very much for having the Victim Witness Support Unit as part of the discussion here this afternoon.
And we indeed appreciate you taking the time as well. So Rondell Fields, a quick vote of thanks, and then we'll pass it over to Jessie Mevento to close off our interaction this evening. Rondell.
Once again, I'd like to thank all the participants, the panel for being here. I'd like to really thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know my time, it is a hard time. I hope Trinidad and Tobago really appreciates the time. I thank your the leaders in your departments for sending you here. I know you all put a lot of work out. I work with you all, and I'm not an easy person to work with. So I mean, I must thank you all for your support. Also, Fazir and Jessie, I must thank you all for your level of humility. For years, you all have supported our organization. You don't ask for anything. And I'm really grateful for the passion that you all have. And I like you, Fazir, you know, even though he's partners, they can ask me hard questions too. And I think that's what people love. And I like the way, Jessie, the commitment always that you've had to the Fathers Association. And on behalf of my guys, we want to thank you all. We want to thank Trin Globe Media, definitely, for just jumping on board and making this happen and navigating everything for us. I want to thank Mr. Adrian Jaikaran for playing that pan rendition. I haven't heard the anthem in nearly 2 years. So, Trinidad and Tobago, fathers, just want to wish you all have a happy Father's Day. You all, I know some of you all still going through your struggles. Don't think we ain't doing nothing. I give my life to this. As I try to tell you guys, I mean, I still have a court order which allows me only 4 days. But I had to find another way, not to wait for the court system to get to see access to my son more. I had to work together with his mother, where we know for the last 4 years, we don't even need the court order again. So I pray this Father's Day, those of you who may not be able to see them due to the curfew, I pray the mothers have some understanding, and also they allow them some kind of visitation to those children on Father's Day if the curfew causes a problem. So thanks again.
Thank you very much, Rondell. Jessie, I thought you were supposed to send the invoice. Me, I don't know anything about doing this thing for free, you know. But anyway, but again, it's been a privilege to work with you all. Jessie, a fantastic job once again. So I'll leave it to you to close off our discussion. Thank you very much again, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us this evening. I must acknowledge a couple of people who would have sent in comments in the Zoom chat, who I believe would want to work with all of the facilitators who facilitated the conversation here today. I just want to call them out. Hugs TT, Mothers Against Drug Abuse, Dr. Gabriel Hussein, and Dr. Robert Moultrie. They are standing by to join hands with you, Rondell, and all our facilitators today to bring about a solution and to bring back balance into the system to ensure that our children get the quality parenting that they deserve, and that the bias that we see in society against one parent or another comes to an end. That said, it's been wonderful. Thanks to everyone. Continue to monitor the Fathers Association Facebook pages and the Facebook pages of the Single Mothers Association as well. Also, continue to listen to the news, because you may hear some pronouncements coming up from, certain persons, whether they're in the government or whether they are from these organizations, sharing important information you need to know to ensure that your parenting and co-parenting situations can go much smoother. So on behalf of me and everyone who took part in this, have yourselves a wonderful rest of the evening. Happy Father's Day in advance to all the fathers and those who are fathering along the way. And everyone, please be blessed. Let's continue to love each other. Let's continue to support each other. That's the only way we're going to survive the current craziness that is the pandemic. Okay? Love, 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 love.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Fatherhood is a sort of a protective kind of caring. The role of the father was strictly trido and, place things deep into our consciousness and into our sensibilities to take us through our own lifetime.
The man was seen as to provide and protect. And most of the nurturing of the child is left to the mother. But now you find that the thinking is different.
Fatherhood is the life. Fatherhood is the main pillar in the family structure. Whether it's biological, whether it's a figurehead, but fatherhood is the main pillar.
Fathers have a very, very important role to play in the formation of the minds of their children, right? And what a father could tell a child or teach a child cannot be taught to that child by a mother.
A father is far greater responsibility. It's about love, it's about nurturing, and to be a role model to your child, and to in fact all children, because fatherhood extends not only to your home.
Fatherhood must play an important role in society because of the fact that the father is supposed to be the exemplar in the family. The father is supposed to be the one who they expect to be there to protect them.
My father is the greatest father that there was. And if I could become half of the father that my father was, I think my children will benefit greatly.
That transition for me personally would have come by witnessing your children being born. I think once you witness that birth, if you are a responsible person, your whole outlook on life changes.
I'm sorry I couldn't bring my son here today. You know, he goes to university and I want him to make it, you know. But that is what all we fathers have to hope, that our children make it. And in order for them to make it, we have to be there with them. Got to be there with them all the time.